Today we're going to talk about 4 times that you shouldn't share what you see in a tarot reading. Now, most of the time, I really do encourage people to be honest with what they're seeing, because this is the only way that's going to help your clients. It's the only way that's going to maintain your integrity as a tarot reader. However, there are times when you have to use discretion over the things that you share. And I want to go over 4 different times that this may come up for you if this is something that you are questioning or maybe unsure of. The first thing you want to be aware of the first time that you might not want to share what you see is if somebody isn't really receptive to what you're saying, right? A lot of times in people's lives, they're in places where they're not ready to really receive the information, right? They're not ready to hear it. They don't want their little imaginary bubble of the way that they think their reality is. They don't want it destroyed or blown, or they don't really want to see beyond that. So sometimes you'll notice when you're doing a reading, you're trying to be honest and tell somebody what's going on in a situation. Sometimes it's stuff about themselves that they're not recognizing, and they are not ready to hear it. They're not in a place where they can do that. But work around that, because the more you keep pounding somebody and banging this into them, 1, they're not listening, and 2, you're wasting their time, you're wasting your time, and they would be better served if you just gave them the other information in the reading, because you cannot force somebody to be ready to hear or accept any sort of information. The second time that you shouldn't mention something is if your client has specifically asked you not to. Now, this seems kind of weird, but it goes something like this. A lot of times people will say, oh, I want a tarot reading, but I'm not sure if I want to know this part or that part or whatever. So I actually had this experience once. I was working with a girl and she wanted to get a tarot reading, but she says, I want to get a reading on my boyfriend and my relationship. I'm scared. I don't want to know if it ends. Like, I don't want to know if we break up. And I said, well, I can work around that. And she's like, really? And I said, yeah, of course, that's no problem. So, I did the reading and I gave her all of the other information, and we had done several readings, and it did pop up on, I think, like a 3rd reading that we had done together. And I saw the event very carefully of what happened. So instead of saying, oh, you guys break up, my solution was, because I was respecting her boundaries, which you should always do, was to say, oh, I see the situation happening. I see a fight happening. It's happening because of these reasons. And, I kind of went around and gave her the information she needed so that she could circumnavigate that event if she wanted to. And so that's one way that you can go around stuff, because I think sometimes people do want information, but there might be one piece of it that they're fearful or they're not ready to have. But that doesn't mean that you can't give them a reading that will be beneficial to them in some way. The third reason you shouldn't share what you're seeing in a tarot reading is if somebody isn't listening to you or if they're arguing with you. The not listening part sometimes comes in where people are upset because they want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear what the cards are saying. They don't want to hear anything else except what they want to hear. Another thing is if they're arguing with you. People can argue for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they argue just to argue because they want to prove you wrong. So sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they're having a hard time processing the information. Sometimes they're having a hard time connecting the dots and relating it to places in their life. And so that can be another reason they're arguing too, not because they're wrong, but just because they can't see how it applies or overlays. So either one of those situations can be really difficult. And so that's a good time to stop pushing, take a step back, and do a reading in the spaces where they seem like they are open. The 4th reason that you shouldn't share, or maybe even do a reading, is if somebody is starting to panic, right? If somebody is having a panic attack, they're having an anxiety attack, they're in this high energy mode, right? Because they're so worked up by a situation. It can happen like when someone initially asks you for a reading. It can happen during a reading when somebody gets agitated. Some signs that you'll notice is that they're not listening to what you're saying really. They continue to ask the same question. They might not like the answer that you're giving them because it doesn't make them feel calm and warm and fuzzy, but it's what's happening that they need to look at. So when somebody is very agitated like that, or they're panicking, that is a time when I don't usually do a reading. If I know that somebody comes to me in that state, I will say, well, I've got some time tomorrow, let's do tomorrow, because they're not going to be listening to anything I have to say, and you don't want to waste somebody's time, somebody's money, and you don't want to waste your energy either. So it's best to do it when both parties are in a place where they can really absorb everything that's going on, and it's going to be a good situation for everybody. So that is the 4th situation of where I would be really hesitant to kind of share what I see in a reading, or even do the reading if that's kind of the initial approach. And that's kind of a personal gauge that you'll have to do. Sometimes people come in, they are slightly anxious and a little worried, and the reading will help calm them down. And those are my favorite moments. I love when I see somebody leaving and they feel a lot better than when they showed up. But what I'm talking about is a more severe anxiety, a more severe panic, where you can really tell the person is very frantic or manic in their voice. When it gets to that point, when you are in that state, your kind of rational thinking shuts down anyway. Like scientifically, this is what happens. So they're not going to be able to really absorb anything. And, my goal is always to really help people. And so that is the fourth reason why I would not really move forward or advance in that particular area. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that's given you some food for thought, some things that you can be aware of as you go into readings if you are experiencing these situations. If you have any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely beautiful day.